Let's speak about godly character, continue. And now we're speaking about Yeshua and Shabbat. And now we need to see Yeshua in this context, that he did a lot of stuff on Shabbat. But that actually means that what he was doing on Shabbat was keeping Shabbat. He was not breaking Shabbat at all. But this is where he starts off talking about it. He says, you are the salt for the land. If salt becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except being thrown out for people to trample on. You are light for the world. A town hidden on a hill cannot be hidden. So he's talking about salt and he's talking about light. And if you look at the Beatitudes and you then look at the exposition of the last 6 commandments, he is speaking about this in the position where you would be speaking about Shabbat. So the question is, what does salt and light have to do with Shabbat? It has everything to do with Shabbat, because on Shabbat you put salt on the bread and you light the lamps. These are the most important lights that are lit in a Jewish house, or the Shabbat candles. So they get together in salt and light. And then he says that if the salt becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? Now, salt has 2 main attributes. The first is that salt gives taste and salt preserves. And on the other hand, the rabbinic attitude to when salt does not have any value is when it causes a rust, because when salt lands on metal, it causes a rust. So then he continues and he says that if Shabbat is salt and light, then you are the light for the world. So the light that you light on the Sabbath is not the light of the world. You are the light of the world. A town on a hill cannot be hidden. But we also know that he says, I am the light of the world. So how is he the light of the world and we the light of the world? Because of the menorah. Because the menorah has the central light from which all the other lights are lit. And that central light, as I said, is known as the shamash, as the servant. So all of the lights of the other 6 candles are lit from the central light, and therefore we are all lit from him. And why can I say that humanity is lit from Yeshua? Because 6 is the number of man, as we've discussed before. And therefore the 6 candlesticks that are there above and beyond the 7th are actually the 6 candlesticks that represent us. Likewise, when people light a lamp, they don't cover it with a bowl, but put it on a lampstand so that it shines for everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before the people so that they may see the good things you do and praise your Father in heaven. So this, in effect, says that we should become the light of the world in terms of the Sabbath. Why? Because the Sabbath is the place where we are supposed to spend time with the scriptures. And the scriptures, that because the Torah is Yeshua, we know in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and came to live amongst us. So Yeshua became this flesh that lives amongst us, and in that way he also is the light that is amongst us. So this light that is Yeshua then becomes us, because we are lit from him, so that people can see the good things that the Father does. And that is the work that is to be done on Shabbat, is to spend time with the scriptures and to have oneself lit as salt and light is lit. Remember the day Shabbat to set it apart for Elohim. You have 6 days to labor and do all your work. That word work in the Hebrew, the original Exodus 20, actually is the work with which you earn money. But the 7th day is a Shabbat for Adonai your Elohim. On it you are not to do any kind of work, not you or your son or your daughter, nor your male or female slave, not your livestock, and not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates to your property. For in 6 days Yudevave made heaven and earth, the sea and everything in them, but on the 7th day he rested. This is why Yudevave blessed the day Shabbat and separated it for himself. So you see what is happening here. He says we are to do no servile work. We are to do none of our professional everyday work, but it does not say that we are not to work at all. But then he says that it is Shabbat. And then it also says, that then we go to Hebrews 3 and 4 that we discussed before, where he actually says that we are to rest from our own works, and that we are to do the works that he has prepared for us. So this puts it all into a very specific perspective, because it also means that on the Shabbat we are prepared for the works that he is to do through us the entire week after that, and also on the Shabbat itself. So let's have a look. On Shabbat, during that time, Yeshua was walking through some wheat fields. His Talmudim, his disciples, were hungry, so they began picking heads of grain and eating them. On seeing this, the Prushim, the Pharisees, said to him, "Look, your Talmudim, your disciples are violating Shabbat." But he said to them, "Haven't you ever read what David did when he and those with him were hungry? He entered the house of Elohim and ate the bread of the presence, which was prohibited both to him and to his companions. It is permitted only to the Kohanim or to the priests." So they were rubbing out the heads of grain and eating this. The Prushim, the Pharisees, obviously lived in their own houses, and they had their stored up food, and therefore they could eat it without going and rubbing it out in the fields. And he, on seeing this, obviously thought, "You hypocrites, you have your food, but now these guys are not to pick for your food and eat it, because suddenly it becomes work. So they should have come here the day before and rubbed out this grain and left it along the side, and then come and picked it up on the Sabbath and then eaten it." So he says, but David, when he was hungry, he entered the tabernacle, because at that stage the tabernacle was still where Samuel was, and he ate the bread of the presence. The bread of the presence is meant only for the priests, and there are 12 loaves of the presence, and they represent the 12 tribes of Israel. David, when he was hungry, went and he ate that. That is not really allowed to anyone who is not a priest, but he went and he ate that with his companions because he was hungry. Yeshua is making a point here. He's saying, you're totally legalistic. David was hungry and he ate the bread of the presence. The law that says it is only for the priests, he broke. But no, this law is made for man and not man for the law. Therefore, when David and his companions are truly hungry, they have no other source of food, they can eat it. Or haven't you read in the Torah that on Shabbat, the Kohanim profane Shabbat and yet are blameless? I tell you, there is in this place something greater than the temple. If you knew what I want compassion rather than animal sacrifice meant, you would not condemn the innocent. For the Son of Man is the Lord, is Adonai of Shabbat. He's saying that the priests actually profane the Sabbath because they work in the temple. And they're working and they're doing their usual servile work in the temple. And then he says that compassion is more important than animal sacrifice. Because where there is compassion, there will be righteousness. And where there is righteousness, there will not be sin. And where there is no sin, there is no reason for animal sacrifice. And therefore, you should not condemn the innocent. For the Son of Man is Adonai of Shabbat. So he is the master of the Sabbath, and he is in absolute control of the Sabbath. So he's much greater than the Sabbath actually is. Now let's just see what's written in Mark. That was Matthew. One Shabbat, Yeshua was passing through some wheat fields, and as they went along, his talmidim began picking heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they violating Shabbat?" He said to them, "Haven't you ever read what David did when he and those with him were hungry and needed food? He entered the house of Elohim when Aviatar was Kohen Gadol and ate the bread of the presence, which is forbidden for anyone to eat but the Kohanim, and even gave some to his companions. Then he said to them, Shabbat was made for mankind, not mankind for Shabbat. So the Son of Man is Adonai, even of Shabbat." Now, I'm going to tell you something that is quite obvious from these two texts that we have now read from Matthew and from Mark. Verbatim, they are very close to each other. It is only Evyatar who is now added in as Kohen Hagadol, as high priest, and then also the statement, so Shabbat was made for man and not man for Shabbat. So once again, Yeshua comes with this concept of the laws are there for man, and man is not there for the laws. So the laws are there to serve mankind, and mankind is not there to serve the laws. And see how important this statement is, because he's actually saying that legalism is not in order. That is actually what he's addressing here. He's saying you're totally legalist in your attitude to the Sabbath. Then he puts it in this context of the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. And that could also read the Torah was made for man and not man for the Torah, because he's, in a manner of speaking, he's saying exactly that. So the Son of Man, who is Yeshua, is Adonai, even of Shabbat. So he is the master of everything, even the Sabbath.
You cannot drive away darkness with more darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot remove hate. Only love can do that. And what I'm actually asking is, isn't Yeshua telling us here that the heart of the Torah, having the Torah not intellectually in your head, but through the Ruach in your heart, teaches you compassion, teaches you loving kindness, while still keeping the Torah. But it is not, I sit in my house, eat my cake and cream, while watching if you, whom I should have served with food, do not perhaps pick up food because you're hungry, so that I can now punish you with the Torah. Would it be true to say this is also a message that Yeshua is giving here?
That's exactly the message he's giving. Because the entire Torah is summarized into this: you must love your neighbor as yourself, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your resources. So it is summarized. When it is not loving, it actually means that it is not the true Torah. Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue. A man there had a shriveled hand. Looking for a reason to accuse him of something, they asked him, "Is healing permitted on Shabbat?" But he answered, "If you have a sheep that falls in a pit on Shabbat, which of you won't take hold of it and lift it out?" He's actually putting it into a context. He's saying that if an animal is in trouble, will you take it out of the pit on the Sabbath? So if a human being is in trouble, will you take the human being out on the Sabbath? he's not really answering him, but he is answering them. Because the way in which he is answering them is in his next statement. How much more valuable is a man than a sheep? Therefore, what is permitted on Shabbat is to do good. Then to the man he said, hold out your hand. And as he held it out, it became restored, as sound as the other one. But the Prushim went out and began plotting how they might do away with Yeshua. The same story is in Mark. And there are the small differences that exist in these two Gospels that are also interesting. Yeshua went again into a synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there, looking for a reason to accuse him of something. People watched him carefully to see if he would heal him on this Shabbat. He said to the man with the shriveled hand, come up here where we can see you. Then he said to them, what is permitted on Shabbat, doing good or doing evil, saving life or killing? And they said nothing. Then looking them over and feeling both anger with them and sympathy for them at the stoniness of their hearts, he said to the man, hold out your hand. And he held it out, and it became restored. The Prushim, the Pharisees, went out and immediately began plotting with some members of Herod's party how to do away with him. Again, if you look at this, you can see that word by word, portions of this are exactly the same as the statement in the book of Matthew. But there are some things that are added in. The gist of it is exactly the same. Again, he's saying, what should you be doing on the Sabbath? You should be doing good. You shouldn't be doing evil. Now, and then he says saving a life or killing, because he's now saying that healing is actually doing good, and not healing is killing. It is doing what is evil. And he puts those into the context of healing a hand. Now, a hand healed on the Sabbath, for goodness sake, the hand could have been healed the next day. He didn't need to do it on the Sabbath. But here is the issue. It is very important that one should have a healthy hand, because with your hands you do deeds with which you are actually expressing the love of God, and you are actually doing what the scriptures expect of you. And therefore, he's actually saying you should be doing good. And then he heals on the Sabbath. And he's actually doing two things. He's healing the hand, he's doing good to the man, so the man is in a better position to work, but the man is also in a better position to serve God through his work now. And once again, it's this whole issue of entering the rest that then comes into this, where he's saying, I will heal him on the Sabbath, so that for all the Sabbaths that he has in the week, then the other 6 Sabbaths of the week, he can actually do what is good. And once again, they go out and they go plotting against him because of what they did. And then when Yeshua asks this question, doing good or doing evil, saving life or killing, they say nothing. Then he looked at them and he felt both anger and sympathy with them. He had sympathy with them because they were the teachers of the law, and they didn't understand. They didn't understand that what they should be preaching is love, compassion, caring, and that even the Old Testament way of looking at this should be love, caring, compassion, because this is the law as far as he's concerned. And when the Lord himself heals on the Sabbath, for which he gave the law to Moses, because Moses saw him and no one has ever seen God, therefore the God that he saw was Yeshua, who gave the commandments. He says that so he has sympathy with them because of the stoniness of their heart, but he's also angry with them. He's angry because they do not understand the scriptures that they are preaching so avidly. So they do not understand that the Sabbath was always intended for doing good. The Sabbath was always intended for healing a hand that is lame.
The Sabbath was made for man, not the man was made for the Sabbath.
Yes.
Can you go slightly deeper into analyzing that statement?
Well, these guys are rubbing out corn, and they're getting food for themselves on the Sabbath, but they're doing it in a way that is strictly. If you look at this Torah very strictly, they're actually breaking the law. And Yeshua is actually also saying that when David ate the bread of the presence, he was also breaking the law. And when the priests are in the temple on the Sabbath, they are breaking the law. And yet the law says that they are to be there. So he actually is saying that when David ate the bread of the presence, he was keeping the law. He was not breaking the law. And he's speaking about this in an Old Testament context, because the people he's dealing with are all Old Testament people, and these people didn't know anything about the New Testament yet at all. So this is all Old Testament stuff, and then he's saying that man was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man. Now, that means that Sabbath is there to serve us. Whatever happens on the Sabbath is meant to serve man. Man cannot abuse it to serve himself, but it is God serving us on the Sabbath. Because on the Sabbath, the Lord comes to us with the Torah. He comes to us with the scriptures, and he offers us the scriptures, and he teaches us how we are supposed to be living the rest of the week. And in a way, he's actually telling us, today, when you hear this voice, which you hear on the Sabbath, do not harden your hearts as they did, but hear the voice and obey it, so that you will do the works that have been prepared for you by my Father who is in heaven. As Yeshua did the work that was prepared for him. And that work is doing good. And doing good is therefore, often it seems to be breaking the Torah, but it is not breaking the Torah, it is keeping the Torah. Therefore, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Because when man is there to serve the Sabbath, he is there to serve the laws. And the laws are there to serve man, not man to serve the laws.
I think it's Kupane who last week said, but what we're talking about here, we would do any day of the week, anyhow, if the need arose.
Yes.
To help your neighbor and to love him, you don't set that aside just for the Sabbath. So doesn't that make every day a Sabbath? Or let me turn the question around. What is there, if anything, that we should do differently on the Sabbath that we don't do every other day of the week?
Well, on the Sabbath we should. The thing is that the Sabbath is not meant for earning money. The Sabbath is meant for studying Scripture and for enriching ourselves with the content of Scripture, and it's also a day of rest. So if it is to enrich us with the Scripture, it means that we must enrich other people with the Scriptures and with what we've learned from the Scriptures on the Sabbath as well. So when there is someone who needs something done on the Sabbath, we should do it. We should not be caught up in not doing it, but that primarily the Sabbath is there for us to rest, to spend time with our family, and to spend time with the Scriptures, and to find new ways of making the Scriptures work for everybody. So it's not, the Sabbath doesn't become useless and doesn't disappear because it is in this way, shape, or form. But the Sabbath is not, we are not there to serve the Sabbath. So the law is not what it's about. It's about the Lord serving us and us serving other people.
So you started off tonight by saying on the Sabbath you will not do your servile work.
Yes.
Isn't that then really the only difference that we, dare I say, voluntarily should be doing in our life? Let's say I'm a trader, I buy and sell stuff for a living.
Yes.
Then on the Sabbath I don't do that.
Yes.
For the rest, on the Sabbath I'll have the same loving kindness that I have on other days. But
Yes.
because on the Sabbath I'm not buying and selling, I can do what you just said. Spend more time with Papa's words, spend more time with my family, spend more time with the community and so on. Would that be correct?
That would be correct. But if your job from day to day is to do good to other people, when the Sabbath comes, you will still continue doing that as well, because doing good is part of what the Sabbath is about. But then you're joined by a whole host of people who are also all doing good to the people around them on the Sabbath.
So as a doctor, you can't say to somebody, come tomorrow, today, I'm not available for your emergency, your medical emergency.
For a medical emergency, no. But if it's what we call a cold case, then and there's no urgency about it, then it's fine to come tomorrow. But if it really is troubling a person, then you decide whether you're going to deal with it. Because by dealing with it, you're doing good to the other person. And that actually means that I'm doing my regular work on the Sabbath.
I'm trying to understand the Sabbath is there to serve men, not men to serve the Sabbath.
Yes. Yes.
Can I conclude that this is the plan that God had made, not us saving the Sabbath, but the Sabbath saving man instead?
Yes.
I'm looking at the example of you not attending to a patient who comes on the Sabbath for attention. You say, no, come the next day.
Yes.
So you are making now the Sabbath you're making men to serve the Sabbath instead of the Sabbath to serve men.
No, because I'm also a man. I'm also entitled to rest. So if a thing really is not urgent, then that's fine for me to say, come tomorrow. But you see, if the person is right there next to me and it's no trouble to do this, then I'll just do it. Get it over and done with.
So can I conclude that the Sabbath is not just this particular day? It is, as Jay has said, it's supposed to be every moment of our lives.
Yes and no, because it means that what it means is that every day is a Sabbath in the sense that we do good to people every day of the week. We don't stop doing good because the Sabbath is finished. We do the same work as we would do on the Sabbath. And this actually means that we should not do our work in a selfish way for ourselves, but we should do our work to the glory of God and for the community, not for ourselves. That is the reason we have work, is for the community and for other people. It's not for ourselves. And that is what this is about. Because the minute it's about myself, I become selfish and I'm actually serving the law, not the law serving me.
Thanks.
Billy?
Yes.
Part of the key to it, maybe, is in Hebrews chapter 3,
Yes.
verse 7. Therefore, as the Holy Spirit says, today, if you want to hear his voice, do not harden your hearts, as in a provocation in the day of temptation in the wilderness,
Yes.
when your fathers tempted me, tested me, and saw my works for 40 years. I was grieved with that generation and said, they are always erring in their hearts, and they have not known my ways. So in my wrath I swore, they shall not enter into my rest.
Exactly.
So it's a time to, the first time that the Sabbath was celebrated was after the creation was completed.
Mhm.
So it's, in some sense, it's a celebration of God's creation
Yes.
and of God himself, what he's done for us. But it's also time to hear him so that we may enter into his rest.
Yes.
And if we don't hear him, no matter whether we technically keep the Shabbat or not, we will not enter his rest.
And that actually means that we're keeping the Shabbat in vain, that it has no advantage for us to keep it at all. And you're right, yes. Because every day is to be a Sabbath. Because we rest from our works and do the works that he has prepared. Yes.